Well, good morning and happy August 17th. It's been a couple weeks now since I released my book, The Hustle Trap, and I want to just give a quick sort of an overview of what the book is about, how the launch went, why I wrote it, and hopefully answer any questions that people have about the book. This whole thing started back in 2021. I had moved to Colorado and was just feeling inspired to start sharing some information on things that I'd learned over 20 plus years of entrepreneurship. I noticed a lot of people out there have really great insight into their niche. So they've been successful, maybe had one success with a business and they share what they did with that business. Whereas it might not be applicable to other businesses. And so just because I've done a lot of, I've been from construction, which is like trucking, excavating, demolition, all the way up to, B2B, drafting services for construction. I've got an online dirt exchange. I've done angel investing. I've also, I've done coaching. So I've worked with a lot of different businesses. I've worked in a lot of masterminds. And so between, my experience and all of their experience, I think that I have like what would be a knowledge set that'd be pretty broadly useful. So I started writing everything down and I started journaling for several months, just trying to ignore most of the tools that I use because I think that more relevant would be the sort of the principles that I use in business that's been able to help me scale businesses from 0 to 7 figures and beyond and do that pretty repeatedly. And a lot of it, the hustle trap itself is about a point where I hit, and many people hit, is you are hustling like crazy to get this thing off the ground. And there's no shortcut. A lot of guys on YouTube and the internet will tell you, hey, you just go and do nothing and just create a bunch of income passively and go hang out on a beach somewhere. And that's a farce. It's not true. It takes a lot of hard work. But that hustle that gets you from 0 to 1, at some point you're going to hit a wall, and that wall is going to be very hard to overcome. You're going to feel overwhelmed. You're going to start questioning why you got into this thing in the first place, and a lot of times it needs structure. And so the hustle trap talks about the structure that I put in place to sort of separate myself from the business and let the business really thrive on its own. The book starts off with, backing up to 2007 after I had gotten out of the military in 2000 and worked for 7 years growing a pretty good sized demolition company, trucking and excavating. And one morning at a job site, I got run over by a truck. Long story. You'll read about it in the book, but I'm the moron that got run over by his own truck. But that, put me into a situation that I hadn't had to deal with before, which was having to reprioritize how I use my time, because before that it was being out with the guys and driving tractors and driving trucks and swinging sledgehammers and sort of doing what I'd learned in the military, which is to lead from the front. And so I was in the field and I was leading from the front, and that was the best way that I could do it. And so this forced me to move to the background and try something completely different, which was sitting in front of a computer and just trying to hack it. Like, how am I going to get the guys busy? Got to get them work. But how am I going to structure the guys to work when I'm not there? How am I going to make sure that everything happens at the office if I can't go to the office? How am I going to keep my business afloat? And so over the next 2 years, I had several more surgeries, kind of putting myself back together. And so the way I did things really had to change. And so a lot of this book is about that process, and all the processes that I came up with along during that time, I've applied to the future businesses. And as a result, I have businesses that really serve me and give me the lifestyle that I want. So when I started going through the book, really thinking about, how I should structure it, the first part goes to start with you. I had a lot of mental roadblocks when I started my entrepreneurial journey, and that was back in basically 1999. And at that time, it was entrepreneurship wasn't a thing. There wasn't a lot of people out there. Jobs were still paying pretty well, and people were able to go out and get work, and there was careers that would happen. And now, work's temporary, doesn't really pay that much. If you want to join the wealthy in America, you have to own a business. So entrepreneurship has become much more mainstream. But I had all these limiting, beliefs about myself, about how much money I can charge, how much money I can make ethically. Like, how do I feel if I'm making more money than I need? How, I guess it was like, it was fighting against some of the my own like inner demons about sort of abundance, understanding that we live in an abundant world and that there's a lot of money out there to be had. People don't talk about money, by the way. People who talk about money are the ones who don't make very much. The people that I know that make money, which is six figures, seven figures, sometimes per month, um, those people don't talk about it. And I think it's probably for a very good reason, because if they did, I think everyone would be out in the streets with pitchforks, overturning this democracy, capitalist society, because it's just not fair. It's really unbalanced. So anyhow, getting past the mindset that I was in my mind was really helpful. And that took a lot. And a lot of other people struggle for the same thing. The next thing was talking about the people. Businesses are about people, whether it's your customers or your employees. And so the nice thing, as I've matured as an entrepreneur over 20 years, is I've watched a lot of new technology come in. In the very beginning, it was yellow pages and newspapers, and everything was analog, everything was on paper, and then slowly transferred onto getting onto the internet, and then digital marketing, and then new softwares and systems that I was able to implement. And so taking people, you've been able to amplify them. My whole thing for myself has always been about multiplying self. So I go through and I find ways that I can, how can 2,000 hours of work happen on my behalf every week? And so typically that's through people who are empowered with good systems. And so I write a lot about that, about the types of systems that I set up, because you can take really exceptional people and put them into bad systems, and they won't thrive, and that's your fault as the business owner. So the first thing is to really master your systems and use yourself as sort of a test proxy for that. And once you have really good systems, then I go through and talk about the different ways, the techniques that I use for hiring people, which I get really, really into the nitty gritty about how I hire people. I'm very particular. I'll typically, get a group of candidates, and then I'll run test after test after test. And the way I structure those tests are maybe not so obvious to the person who's taking it, what the things that I'm looking for, and also maybe understanding that I'm looking more about the communication that happens afterwards. How quickly did they get the test done? Their answers, because you kind of got to throw them some curveballs, and so I have certain ways that I do that. Uh, Next is really about I talk about when I do hire people, I want people who have a lot of potential. Skills can be taught. Work ethic cannot be taught. And so find people who really want to work hard, who are anxious to learn, and then train them and bring them into your system, and then bring them into your company. People who maintain your culture, people who don't need to be managed, people who are motivated to self-manage in the right systems. I like to build what I call sort of like almost like bumper rails. When you go to a bowling alley, you have a kid, they have the bumper rails. They throw it. I do that for my employees. So I want to give them a lot of freedom and flexibility, but I want to stop them from falling off into the gutter. And so that was a really important lesson for me, and something I wanted to pass on. Next, I go into what I call the next level tactics, which is about elimination. It's kind of like when, if you have something wrong with your health, you eliminate everything and then slowly start adding things back in. You can do the same thing with a business. And so, especially at that point when you're at the inflection where you're kind of stuck in the hustle trap, start eliminating things and then start adding things that really do push productivity, because some of the tools that you employed when you first started your business are probably not the same tools you need now. And then understanding, like, when you run into problems, you're creating systems, you're finding what your unique edge is. Do you have a way that you can create a mini monopoly within your business? Is there something about you particularly that gives you an edge above your competitor? And if there is, then you really need to leverage that. And then gamifying your time, understanding your time is worth a lot. And the more time that you spend up in the grandstands looking down at the game, the more you'll understand and sort of be detached and almost work as a consultant for your own business. So don't go out and hire a consultant, because they don't know as much as you about your business. Remove yourself so you can be the consultant. And so that's really, once you get there, then you can start playing. Entrepreneurs, when they're bored, get very creative. And they start a new business, start new business lines, find new marketing programs, and that stuff doesn't happen when you're grinding in front of your computer, replying to emails, answering phone calls. It happens when you're out on a walk or maybe sitting on a pier fishing somewhere, and you go, because you need to. I mean, being an entrepreneur it's a creative endeavor. I almost think of entrepreneurship as you're almost like an artist. You're bringing a lot of different things together, and for other people's appreciation. And so walking away from your business and then, taking a lot of time to reflect. So that's sort of the high level. And I think from the feedback that I've gotten so far that I got it across, and a lot of people been really gratuitous, and, I've gotten a lot of thank you notes, and other people just telling me, asking questions about, ways that they can apply it to their business. And so I hope that everyone who reads it really can get something out of it. And I would love to hear more about what you got out of the book, and also what I'm missing in the book. Maybe there's other things that you would have liked me to touch on. And if so, I would love to expand on it. And I'm happy to write either additional chapters or maybe a blog on the side or something, and start filling the gap. Because my goal here is to sort of push entrepreneurship. Because for me, entrepreneurship has been the great savior in life. When I got out of the military, I was essentially unemployable. I was kind of a pain in the butt, and I only like to do things my way. And so it didn't work out as a soldier either. I mean, I was a good soldier, I suppose, but I was frustrated all the time because I wanted to do things a certain way. And when I came out, even working in restaurants and bouncing and bartending, it was sort of like I need to be done and go do my own thing. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are the same. It's the same reason why I work with a lot of veterans and even guys that have gotten out of prison, because they have a skill set that they can leverage into an income where they don't have to answer to anyone except for their customer. And so that's what I'm here to promote. And I hope that I'm able to assist you in that journey. And so anyhow, reach out at ryancrownhome.com or Ryan Crown Home across all channels. Google me, and let's stay in touch. And I hope we can have a great time together.